welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at three stories. The first is with reference to the upcoming visit of the Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister, who will be coming to Pakistan on a two-day official visit on the invitation of the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari from the 5th to the 6th of May to co-host the 4th Strategic Dialogue. And this is going to be, of course, important in terms of the recent visits that we have done in terms of strengthening the relationship between China and Pakistan. Again, something which has been reiterated by the Chinese ministry's spokesperson as an all-weather partnership, and that Pakistan and China are hardcore friends. And this is, of course, important in terms of the way that the historical relationship has flourished, especially since the Prime Minister's visit to the country last year, and then, of course, the Chief of Army Staff's visit as well. It's important to note how this relationship is being enhanced further and what sort of dynamics are now going to come into play, particularly, of course, with reference to the issues surrounding Afghanistan as well, and what role Pakistan, China and Afghanistan can play together in order to move forward. There's also reports coming in that the UN has granted special approval to the Afghan interim foreign minister, who will be taking part in the meetings as well. So it's going to be important in terms of what has earlier also been held with reference to the UN Secretary General in Doha, where a couple of dozen foreign ministers have also sat together and spoken about issues surrounding especially women's rights in Afghanistan and other such measures in order to move ahead, where the UN is also doing an evaluation of its relief efforts within the country that is going to be completed tomorrow, and seems to be at a hardcore choice in terms of what it needs to do moving forward, whether or not the relief activities continue, as Afghanistan also extended the ban for women working to UN agencies as well. So it's important, of course, in light of this, what sort of a role this particular dialogue is going to take up, but also in terms of our bilateral engagements with China, and then, of course, the kind of economic situation that Pakistan is going through with the IMF package still being awaited, and Chinese commitments obviously helping us in that regard. But what exactly can be perhaps an increased measure with reference to this relationship, and whether or not there's going to be any further boost to this dynamic, is what we're going to be discussing in the show today. Our next segment is also going to be focusing on Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's visit to India to participate in the SCO Council of Foreign Ministers meeting, and he went to India today. He's there today and tomorrow, and it's important, of course, in terms of how this visit has come by a foreign minister in Pakistan after more than a decade to India, and especially since the unilateral actions of August 2019. This is important in terms of the tensions between both the countries and what sort of an impact this is going to have. Of course, there is the symbolic value that is going to be there, but of course the SU is not a platform for bilateral engagements to be discussed. But whether or not the foreign ministers will be able to get something out of this particular meetup, and whether or not it's going to pave the way for any sort of conversation further, is of course something that still remains to be seen. But both the foreign minister and the prime minister have reiterated that it's a step in the right direction. It's a step for us to honor the SCO platform, and that, of course, is important and shows Pakistan's commitment to the SCO agenda as well. So we're going to be taking a look at that in the show as well. Our last segment is going to focus on what unfortunately we've been seeing for quite some time in India, where not only are the politicians or the government representatives talking about certain aspects which are anti-Islamic or anti-Pakistan, but also how a lot of that is also coming now into the mainstream media. And unfortunately, it seems that there's another film that is being released which has an anti-Islam agenda, and the trailer that is being released of the Kerala story is also important in terms of what it highlights and how it represents the Muslim community in a bad aspect. And this is something that a lot of the people within India are also expressing their displeasure over, and also criticizing the misinformation in this particular story as well, and how it's exaggerated the facts and morphed the truth into something which is not real. And so that's also something that we'll touch upon at the end of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. We've also been joined today in the studio by Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmad, who's Member Planning Commission. Thank you very much, Dr. Ishtiaq, for being part of the show. And we've been joined online by Mr. Shakeel AhmadRamay, who's a political analyst for our first segment. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the discussion. Dr. Ishtiaq, let me start with you with reference to, of course, what has been happening in terms of where Pakistan currently stands, both in its political and economic crises, and then, of course, our history with China. It's of utmost importance, of course, to us that this relationship is even further strengthened, and we're glad that the similar statements, of course, are also coming in from the Chinese side. But in terms of the recent visits, both by the Prime Minister and the Chief Army Staff, what sort of importance do you think that this particular visit will have, and how it will shape the discussion in Pakistan?
Well, as you know that China and Pakistan are long-standing friends. They have been strategic allies for many, many decades. But a very important transition in this relationship took place around 20 years ago when Gwadar came in the picture. And then 10 years ago, there was a framework agreement to sign this China-Pakistan economic corridor. So this corridor and its implementation actually completes 10 years this year. And I will, highlight the importance of CPEC in terms of its revival. In the previous government, almost 4 years were wasted. This is a crucial project. It came to us at a time when we were facing severe economic crisis, energy crisis, and we were not out of the war on terror and its implications. So it was a blessing in disguise. And here we are 10 years down the lane. The region has undergone a very important geopolitical shift, especially through Saudi-Iran thaw, which was mediated by China, and CPEC has basically regained its strategic significance. And what has happened actually, I can reveal it to you in the last 1 year, because the Planning Commission also drives the main institutional frameworks of this corridor. CPEC stands revived with a new momentum, and there is not only excitement in Pakistan, but also equally the Chinese side is also excited. In the past 1 year, we have completed very important infrastructure projects. There has been headway in new domains such as renewable energy, and I think with the visit of the Chinese Foreign Minister, this relationship will be reinforced and there will be tangible, measurable outcomes as we go forward.
Right, absolutely. And I'm glad you spoke about CPEC because, Mr. Shakeel, I want to shed more light on this in terms of what is going on, and especially in terms of the discussion when the Chief Army Staff also visited China. This is an important aspect that was talked about. And even previously, we've seen that there have been certain concerns that were raised regarding the security of Chinese officials and citizens within the country. And I want to understand how that is going to be part of the agenda, and whether or not the way that we want to move forward to this, is there any sort of assurance that is required by the Chinese side, or do you think that there is a renewed stance in terms of the commitment that Pakistan has put forth, and that there's no such problem with regards to CPEC projects in the country anymore?
Thank you, Sama, for a very important question. But I think when we look at the CPEC specifically, and I'm not talking about China-Pakistan relation, I'm just talking about the CPEC. We have to be conscious and we have to ask ourselves 2 questions. Number 1, so what support we are getting from China? Number 2, so are we exploiting all the opportunities which has been offered to us? If you look at the first question, so China is providing support in all fields. Either it's, you can talk about an economic situation, energy, or transportation, whatever you talk about. But the answer of second question is quite complicated. Unfortunately, we are not exploiting the full potential of opportunities. We are wasting our time in credit game or blame game. Look at our political elite, whoever in the government, so what are they doing? They are blaming other parties for the lack of work. So they are trying to take the credit for all the good doings. So with the parties and the government, they need to understand it is a China-Pakistan economic corridor. It is not the China or some political party corridor. So China's commitment to the corridor is always same. The problem is with our actions. In the look at so what we're doing for the last 10 years, the first 5 years, okay, if the PMLN says the PTI did not work, so first 5 years of CPEC, it was related to the PMLN. What they did to build or construct the special economic zones, because the second phase of economic zone, second phase of CPEC is all dependent on special economic zones. Nothing. They are in the power for 1 more year. What they have done? The real problem in second phase is that so we have to consolidate work at one point. It is not like the first phase. PMLN is still stuck in the first phase. The first phase cooperation was all about the government to government or government to private sector in China. But the second phase is all about private sector. And when you have to establish a company, you need to deal with the 5 to 6 different type of the departments. Even for the tax, you have to register with the Federal Board of Revenue. You have to register with the area tax area office, and number of other things which are happening. I'm saying it for a long time, but we're still there. In the PTA government, there was one good initiative. They tried to consolidate work with the CPEC authority. But unfortunately, PTI, they themselves, they weakened the institution and they led the way to dissolve the institution. And the PMLN, they have completed the process. So that is a real problem, consolidation of the work, which we are not doing. And we are not making analysis of the ground reality. On number one, what strengths we have and who are our competitors in the CPEC. Let's start by the competitors. Saudi Arabia is emerging as a big competitor to the CPEC. After the visit of President Xi Jinping, they have announced they will be establishing 4 special economic zones. But when they say they will do it, this initiative will have the direct relevance because we were planning to invite Saudi Arabia to invest in the CPEC as a third party. It will also have the implication of Pakistan's Look Africa policy because Africa is in the neighborhood of Saudi Arabia. So why some company come to the Pakistan if they have a better opportunity in their neighborhood? And Chinese would definitely love to go there. Then Iran. Iran has launched 3 or 4 major initiatives. Look around the north-south corridor, east-west corridor, a railway corridor, then the north-south international transportation network. North-south international transport network start from the Mumbai, go to the Europe, through the Moscow, Afghanistan, and Central Asian state. Look around the Turkey. Turkey has come with the idea of the middle corridor. If look at let's say India, although they did not join the BRI, but they're a member of the BRICS, and they are the member of the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, and they are the biggest beneficiary of Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. And the same is the case with the BRICS. You can go on to the Afghanistan, you can go on to the Central Asian state, you can go on to the Southeast Asian states. Southeast Asian states, they have established their direct linkages with China through the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So these are the competitors. What we are doing? Nothing, we're just sitting. Second part, ground reality. What we have in our pocket, which can help us to speed up the work and which can help us to immediately give a relief to our economy. 2 sectors, agriculture. Agriculture is a big demand, where we can also bring the investment from the Middle East, because Saudi Arabia import there more than 85% food. Kuwait also import more than 85% food. Same is the case with the Qatar. Look at the UAE and other Middle Eastern countries. We have land. We have 8.5 million cultivable wasteland in Pakistan, and the
Right,
biggest chunk
absolutely.
is in Balochistan,
Right,
4.256
absolutely.
million.
I understand
And
your point, but
second,
let and I'll come back to you, but let me also continue the discussion with reference to what was said earlier also. Farrukh, we've seen in the past the Chinese spokesperson has also clarified that whatever issues are going on within the country, that's not it doesn't impact the relationship between Pakistan and China, that irrespective of whatever crisis exists, that Pakistan and China have always had historical ties and will continue to do so. But I want to understand, as Mr. Shakeel Ramay was also earlier referring to different political parties and the way they've taken stances, whether or not the current political crisis within the country or the economic situation in the country has any impact on our relationship with China.
Right, Sana, thank you very much for this question regarding, what Shakeel Ramay said. I'm not here to actually indulge in any blame game. I think all the political parties have played their role in trying to improve the relationship between the two countries, and I think that this relationship between China and Pakistan is beyond political bickering. Pakistan knows instinctively, right, that China is one of its closest allies, and China also knows that Pakistan is very close to it. So this relationship has only one direction to go, that is upwards. In that spirit, I can tell you that the visit of our friend, our brother, our benefactor, the new foreign minister of China is, eagerly awaited in Pakistan, anticipated. And the moment he comes, we are going to rekindle, the old fire that has been burning for quite some time. Regarding CPEC and what exactly are the atmospherics, look, we have this habit in Pakistan. Media has become what is often known as Malamti Sufi, that you keep on actually condemning your own self. There's so much propaganda going on in international media, especially because it targets China. And then because India is also honing that negative sentiment and directing that at CPEC, because of that everybody internationally seems to be actually speaking negatively of this cooperation or these projects. We can actually avoid indulging in blame game and focusing on what can be done. I think that it is true that there were opportunities which were missed, but I think that was because of the circumstances and what your question actually implied. Pakistan's economic condition hasn't been very stable, and even when Imran Khan Sahab came, we had to go to IMF, and at that time, if you remember, Mike Pompeo, who was the Secretary of State during Donald Trump's time, he actually came on record and said, IMF, your money, American taxpayers' money, should not go to China through Pakistan. So that kind of circumstances are there, and there are pressures, interportal pulls. But I tell you that repeatedly there were speculations that Pakistan might be under pressure to, reduce the ties with China. That never happened. And with the, new team that has taken over in China, and of course our team also, I think that there is going to be very, very, great opportunities coming in the future, and we will keep on looking towards them.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Ishtiaq, with reference to the Afghanistan factor as well, this is going to be an important discussion. And of course, the participation of the interim Afghan foreign minister is also going to be important here. But in terms of what role Pakistan and China both can play with regards to the situation of Afghanistan, what can that possibly be, given the international sentiment and the fact that there is still no move away from the stance of the recognition with reference to the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, and of course the situation in terms of the Taliban regime's commitments is deteriorating?
Well, as you know that both China and Pakistan, as part of their CPEC discussions, are in favor of extending this opportunity to the third country. And by the third country, we mean the neighboring countries, including Iran and Afghanistan. And I think it's important, on the eve of Chinese foreign minister's visit, we have the Afghan counterpart also visiting Pakistan. It will be a great opportunity, to extend this regional, network to Afghanistan and potentially to Iran. As far as the previous argument that, CPEC, there will be a counter from Saudi Arabia, I think this has no basis. CPEC is only a means to an end. And this means is essentially about laying down the basic architecture, both in terms of energy projects and railways and road projects. So that is why, there was a lull in its implementation for some years. Deliberate or otherwise is not the point at all. And then once it is laid down, then there are a host of, projects, including special economic zones, industrial cooperation, productivity, exports and trade, and agriculture as well. So down the lane until 2030 and beyond, you will see a lot happening if our strategic ties continue to move ahead and if Pakistan remains politically stable and our policies continue despite differences of leadership and government. These are big ifs, and I expect that Pakistan's future course will be steady. Now let me also emphasize the point I comprehensively dealt with in a chapter that I recently submitted in a book that is going to be published on the eve of the 10th anniversary of CPEC by a Chinese think tank. That article, basically chapter, is about the grand connection between Central Asia and the Middle East that CPEC actually facilitates, with Gwadar acting as a gateway for China into the Middle East. When we talk about CPEC, and when I emphasize that it is about, it is just a means to an end, think about it, 10 years, 15 years down the lane, with Central Asia regionalism further integrating, consolidating, China leading the show, China also through BRI extensively engaged in the Middle East, in the Gulf region in particular, and both the Middle Eastern countries, which are energy rich, and China and Central Asia, which also want to have a goods and energy trade with the Middle East and beyond the Middle East in Africa and Europe. So imagine all these regions looking at Pakistan with CPEC, the means completed along the way, including ML1 and the railways project with South China Morning Daily recently reporting a $58 billion worth feasibility study of a railways project between Gwadar and Kashgar. Imagine 15, 20 years down the lane, all these projects completed, where will Pakistan be? In my humble opinion, the only glimmer of light for Pakistan is CPEC. This is a project of national importance, and I think we should never, I agree with Farrukh, we should never play politics on a core national project such as this.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Shakeel, the issue with regards to bilateral cooperation also comes down to the defense cooperation that has also been previously discussed, and this is important not just in terms of India but also, of course, also Pakistan's position in the region and what sort of cooperation can possibly exist, especially with reference to the spike in terrorist activities within the country as well. Do you think that the kind of military to military cooperation that we've seen in the past and the kind of challenges that Pakistan is facing today, that this particular partnership can be enhanced for both the countries to play an increased role?
Yes, of course. We have seen in the past Pakistan and China have worked closely. And the difference of Chinese partnership Pakistan is that China always helped Pakistan to build the capacity and achieve the self-sufficiency. China never tried to build the dependency. That is a very unique. If you look at the Western country, they try to build the dependency. But coming back to the question which Ishtiaq Sasa was saying, I never use the word counter. It's a competition. We need to understand we're living in a global village where the friends are also competitors. And also I mentioned categorically, opportunities are immense. Number of opportunities. The problem is how we capitalize. So did we build the special economic zone, which is the cornerstone of the second phase? Without the special economic zones, we will not be able to exploit the benefits of the CPEC. One thing and second thing, when we are making the statements, we need to be very rational. For example, so when we say it's a game changer, either we are building the infrastructure which will make it the game changer, or just we are creating hysteria. We are to bring the more negativity from the Western side, from India, from our own people. Be rational, be grounded. One thing, second thing, now you asked about the military to military relationship. Definitely, China, if you look at the statement by the top diplomat of Chinese side, so Yang Yi, he categorically said, so military is the defender, staunch defender of Pak-China relation. So you can analyze what importance they give to the military role in bilateral relation. So they China gave up, because China always try to build and work with stable actors, and the military is a stable actor in the case of the Pakistan. This cooperation is enhancing. You will see, this is the first visit. You will also see some new things which will be happening in the coming days. More bilateral high-level exchanges, and there will be more work or financial mechanism, cooperation on the financial mechanisms. We will find the new things. But if we have to benefit again, what I'm saying, Chinese are our brothers. They are our friends. They are our brothers, ironclad brothers. They will stand with us. What would be the situation? No second thought on that. But what work we have to do, we have to do. Chinese cannot do instead of us. They can propose us, they can guide us, they can give us opportunities.
Right,
It
absolutely.
is up to
Absolutely. I
us.
understand your point. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you very much, Mr. Shakeel Ramay, for joining us and being a part of the discussion as well. And Farrukh, I also want to take a look at how this is going to impact, how the visit of the foreign minister to India is going to impact now the discussion, also because it's coming right after that. But before that, let me just welcome Mr. Sumit Peer, an analyst from India who's joined us after quite a long time. It's been a while since I've seen you on my show. Thank you very much for joining us again. It's good to have you here. Farrukh, of course, we'll talk in more detail regarding the foreign minister's visit to India and the participation in the SCO Council of Foreign Ministers meeting. But I want to understand whether or not how we are going to be witnessing the Chinese foreign minister right after this in Pakistan. Whether or not do you think that there's going to be any influence of the SCO meeting as well?
Right, Sana, that is a fascinating question because SEO is a different kind of ball game altogether. SEO is essentially a multilateral institution and it is a regional cooperation organization. When it comes to China and Pakistan, our relationship has more or less been strongly bilateral. We have focused on our bilateral ties. I still have to see what actually comes out of SCO's meeting. But remember one thing, when Shakeel Ramay was talking about things, I was thinking that we end up actually talking about everything in terms of zero-sum game, that somebody's gain has to be somebody's loss, right? But we have seen that there are situations where all countries can actually complement to each other, and that's how you actually build regional blocks. Yesterday I brought up Barry Buzan as well, but there are many intellectuals who actually focus on regional cooperation, but then they end up talking about international competition as well. I don't believe that there has to be any kind of competition. Pakistan can work with China, Pakistan can work with India, Pakistan can work with US as well. And all these countries are working with each other as well. So why not actually focus on the importance of the moment when our foreign minister is in India, and then, as you pointed out, the Chinese foreign minister is coming to Pakistan. Let us celebrate that diplomacy and cooperation has some scope.
Absolutely. Mr. Sumit Peer, how's our foreign minister doing in India? Are you taking care of him?
Thank you very much, Sanaji, for having me on the show. It has been a pleasure. We have this culture and ethos. Our guests are like a god to us, and when he is here, we'll are taking care of him. He's fine. He's doing great. We have seen a few media bites. Every the outlook is positive. Mr. Bilawal is talking all the positive things, and the agenda is SU here, and it's a multilateral forum. So, I mean, the intention is to make it successful. We are doing our part. I think he already had a bilateral with the Russian counterpart, Mr. Lavrov. India had a bilateral, Dr. Jaishankar had a bilateral with the Chinese foreign minister, Dr. Gang, and then Mr. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. So things are happening as per the agenda. Today, there has been quite a bit of diplomacy which has been happening around. Tomorrow, it will be a heavier day with agendas and things will be discussed. And the SCO is not a small organization. If you look, it is controlling around 60% of the world's population and 55% of the global trade. So if you look from that perspective, it's an important organization. It's very important to break that Western dominance at the global stage. It's a very important to Central Asia's peace and development. So it's a pretty good thing. I mean, if we see with open heart and mind, I mean, if we keep our differences apart and focus on SCO, there's a lot which can be achieved. There's a lot which can be worked in the mutual interest. And as Mr. Zardari has already declared that he's not coming to India for the bilateral. So it's better to keep our differences and our issues aside and focus on SCO and see what best can be done for the region, what best can be done for the humanity.
Absolutely, and as the Prime Minister of Pakistan has also reiterated, of course, we have shown our commitment to SCO, and it is because we value SCO so much that our Foreign Minister is there. But I also want to emphasize on the fact that, of course, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan is in India after more than a decade, and this is coming, of course, after the actions of 2019 as well, and the kind of tensions that we have seen between Pakistan and India. Don't you think that this alone, the fact that our Foreign Minister is in India after such a long time, and of course is valuing the summit as well and is there at the moment, has the importance also in terms of the bilateral engagement between both the countries, and can possibly also then influence the way that the relationship can move forward? Do you see value in that?
I think, Sanaji, the good thing is Mr. Zardari has decided to come in person. He had an option of joining virtually, which we have seen in the past. But coming personally is a good step. We welcome him. And, if you see the statements of Dr. Jaishankar, he is very clear that it's a bilateral, multilateral forum, and every SCO member is more than welcome because the agenda is there. I would say that some ice has been broken. Some ice has been broken. Things have moved a few inches. But honestly, ma'am, if you talk of the bilateral, because India and Pakistan is a very high voltage issue, and bilaterals only happen if they are planned and if they are executed, and the committees and the delegations know what is the agenda, what is to be agreed and what is not to be agreed, and what are the common points, what are not the common points. Unfortunately, I don't see a possibility of a bilateral, but it's an ice-breaking moment. I see it as a first step in the right direction, and I hope and pray that in the long run things are better, relations are better, and better things can be done, because it's what Prime Minister Modi rightly said. It's not the era of war, it's the era of cooperation, and that is what we should stick to, and we should look for the betterment of the region and the humanity as such.
Dr. Ishtiaq, when we take a look at this situation and what Mr. Sumit Peer was also saying is a step in the right direction, what really is the right direction for Pakistan and India to take forward, and whether or not you think that this particular visit will pave the way? I understand that bilateral engagement is not part of the agenda, but of course, in terms of the way that it's impacting the future, what do you see is going to be that direction that we're talking about?
Well, Sana, these regional is called new regionalism in the last 30 years. This is a post-Cold War moment, and every year we have seen a number of free trade agreements and regional organizations, informal and formal, emerging ever since 1990s. So what happens when you have countries with lingering security issues? Sometime, at the start, just as it happened in the case of Shanghai 5B, which became SCO in 2001, they resolved the bilateral disputes, that pertain to border security. The same happened, in the case of ASEAN. But then there are cases of regional organization whereby bilateral disputes between countries becoming members is always there. You just look at India and Pakistan, which joined in 2017. This year, later this year, when this foreign ministers meeting shapes the agenda for the annual summit, you will see Iran becoming a full-fledged member. This time in the foreign ministers meeting, you have Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Bahrain attending as dialogue partners en route to become observer states and the full members. So you will see this fascinating progress in the years ahead, where you have arch rivals like Iran and Saudi Arabia in the same organization, India, Pakistan also. So it is a slow process. Gradually regionalism actually helps conflict resolution, and I am not sure that India and Pakistan are exception to this fundamental principle.
Right. Farrukh, when we talk about the SCO in itself also as a platform, I want to understand the importance that it holds, not only in terms of what we're hoping to achieve from this particular visit, but also in terms of the kind of issues that are discussed. And then when we take a look at, of course, this happening in India and the Foreign Minister of Pakistan also participating, whether or not this can then possibly just be the fact that there is a summit that is being attended by various foreign ministers, and after that, later on, it can be forgotten as to be just that.
SCO will not let you forget the importance of this event, right? But before that, I wanted to say hi to Sumit Peer. In the past, he and I had tough exchanges on this program, but today this is the greatness of this moment, that he and I were kind of agreeing on everything. In fact, the camera did not cut me. When he was speaking, I was, nodding like a doggy in the dashboard. So I was totally in agreement. But it is important that we focus on the, the multilateral nature of this forum. And something fascinating is going on there, Sana. Remember that when this body was first constituted, it was called the Shanghai Five, and the basic idea was that it is going to work for multipolar world. At that time, US had invaded Iraq, and there was a lot of confusion regarding unipolar world. But amazingly, this forum seems to have transformed itself into something altogether different. Now it is talking about the importance of working together, right? And it is correct that two of the most populous nations in the world are sitting together. Remember that how India and China's view of each other actually develops also affects international discussion and talk of decoupling or de-risking or cooperation or lack thereof. So it is very important. Remember, we, Pakistan and India, have the habit, a bad habit, of holding every event hostage to our hostilities. Like SARC, what became of SARC. Every time there would be summit of SARC, there would be this impression that it is about India and Pakistan. But I'm glad that there are these two powerhouses, India and China, sitting together, because they cooperate also. And if they can work out their differences and they can realize that there are, context in which they can be partners, the world becomes a better place for me, because I realize this thing for a fact, that no matter how much Pakistan criticizes India or India criticizes China, 1.4, 1.5 billion people cannot be left aside or declared enemy of the universe, right? So we all in the end have to work together, and there is huge poverty figures in all these countries. So why not actually focus on that and build on commonalities and possibilities of working together?
Absolutely. And Sumit Peer, I'm glad that you also echoed these sentiments. But beyond the SCO platform and beyond such summits, of course, you're talking about the Prime Minister Modi also having the same sort of ideology towards cooperation and moving towards regional partners working together on the kind of challenges that we face. Beyond such summits, what is India's agenda or measures that it is possibly taking to increase that cooperation, not just with Pakistan, but also other countries in the region?
You see, Sanaji, there are 8 forums in the world. If you're SCO, you talk of G20, you talk of ITU, you talk of BRICS and all. India is the only country out of the top 4, B4 countries which we called, which is India, US, China, and Russia, where Prime Minister Modi and India is members. But we have maintained our relations with Americans. We are maintaining our ecosystem with Chinese. We are maintaining our ecosystem with Russians. Today, I want to bring your attention to the 3 important developments which have happened in the last 15-20 days, and the world geopolitics is changing at an alarming rate. First of all, de-dollarization is an active and working phenomena. Yesterday, one more bank in United States of America has failed, and JP Morgan took it over. The interest rates in America are up to 5.5% from a 0.5% 18 months back. There has been an attack on Kremlin. Now, Ukraine has attacked Kremlin, which has even crossed the Hitler, because even Hitler did not attack the Kremlin. So with all these developments happening in the world, with a volatile world, the Western dominance is ending. UNSC is no longer an important player. UNSC doesn't declare a lot of things. These regional alliances, ITU2, G20, SCO, G20 and G7, and BRICS and all, they are shaping the new world order. Because already if you look in BRICS, there are 19 more countries who want to join. And in SCO, countries are already talking about doing trade in the local currency, which I find as a very positive move, because this dollar dominance has to add. US in the COVID time printed $7 trillion. And as per my sources, they are going to print 4 trillion more. But you see the amount of skyrocketing inflation in US, you see the interest rates in US, which are unprecedented. And even Mr. Ted Cruz, who is a front runner for the presidential elections, has said that at this point of time, at this interest rate, US economy is not sustainable because you're talking of a $31.4 trillion declared debt. It's a declared debt as for today. So with all these changes happening, the world order has to change, geopolitics has to change, new alignments should happen. We have to look at a different world which is shaping up more faster than I can think. I've been predicting this on my various shows, but this is happening. So we all have to adapt very fast, ma'am.
Absolutely, and I'm happy you're saying that, but don't you think that there are possible hindrances to this agenda as well in terms of the kind of tensions that perhaps you're facing with China and Pakistan and maybe other partners in the region as well? And of course, I'm glad that the focus is on building alliances and cooperation, but how are such hindrances being overcome by India?
You see, our message to China was very clear. The Chinese last time said that all is well at the LAC. We said, no, all is in the well. So we are saying that you have to resolve these border issues with Pakistan. We are saying terror and talks cannot go together. This is not a lot on the plate. There's not a lot of contentious issues which cannot be sorted out. There are a few issues which can be sorted out. But you see, we are engaging with China. We are also engaged with Pakistan in SCO. Where there was an NSA's meet which happened in Tajikistan. Mr. Ajit Doval was yesterday in Iran. So we are trying to engage with all the people around the world. We have our differences. We have some tricky issues to handle, but we are not letting them come in the way for the things to move. We are not letting them become the roadblocks or the stumbling blocks. That is the positive diplomacy. That is the sane diplomacy, because geopolitics is changing, ma'am. The Western dominance and Western controlled institutions are no longer controlling the world. SCO is around more than 50% of the world population, more than 45 to 50% of the global trade. So we can't see SCO as a very small organization. It has its own power, economic, social, and political power. Let's try to encash.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but happy to hear those sentiments, and thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again soon. In the end of the show, we're going to be also taking a look at the film release, apparently, from which is coming in soon. The trailer has already been released. It's called The Kerala Story, and it's reportedly about 3 women from Kerala who have been influenced and radicalized by Muslim roommates. And this is important in terms of what the film is talking about in terms of love jihad, or in terms of the influence that even the young population has on others in Kerala, and was earlier purported to have said that there were 32,000 people who were then affected and recruited in ISIS, but then it was after the criticism that the trailer received, it was then changed to 3. Farrukh, when we take a look at the situation, and I've seen the trailer as well, and I believe you must have as well, it seems that the way that this entire incident is being portrayed seems to generalize and exaggerate the truth. And this is not something new that we've seen coming from India. But again, such misinformation has huge impact and huge influence. And what we were earlier discussing in terms of cooperation, how do we hope to achieve that when such content is being created?
Right, Sana, that is fascinating. Let me apologize, I have not seen that video clip or that trailer.
All right.
Because every time I grew up in a household where Indian movies were, drip fed, and I think that perhaps because of that abuse, I have actually something against Bollywood. Every time an Indian movie starts, I actually end up dozing off. But regarding this movie, it actually is the proof that the remnants of the Islamophobia factory that was created around the world, initiated perhaps at that time by Israel, but now, since then, it has been dismantled by Israel. But in India, it is a gift that keeps on giving, right? So somehow, a multi-billion industry that was India's Bollywood has become prey to this propaganda wars that they keep on waging against their own minorities. Regarding Pakistan, India, I don't know what exactly happens in India. My only concern will be Kashmir, and when movies like Kashmir Files actually come out, then I have a problem. But regarding their propaganda, their country, whatever they do, in 1947, Indian Muslims had the choice of coming to Pakistan. Those who actually stayed there who became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they have been actually regimented gradually. So I am not that much bothered about that. Human rights, of course, I am concerned about human rights all over the world. But how India treats Pakistan will define how the cooperation can be built. How Pakistan actually treats India will define how relationship, a bilateral relationship can be built. But regarding this propaganda, I don't think anybody is going to watch this movie.
Are you sure about that?
I am hoping. I am not going to. I don't know about others.
All right. Well, we hope whatever the case is in terms of who watches it or not, perhaps at least there is some sort of fact checking, and that whenever there is any distribution of any content, that people are able to deconstruct and also understand what the underlying meaning is and where people are coming from, so that we're more critical of the kind of information that we absorb. But thank you very much for being part of the discussion. Thank you, Dr. Ishtiaq, for being a part of the discussion as well. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll see you tomorrow.